Well, again, welcome to Northshore. My name is Scotty. I am the pastor here, and whether you're in this room or you're joining us online, I'm just so glad that you're here. Some of you, I'm guessing, have been to more Easter services than you can remember. But for some of you, this is your very first Easter in a church. And I just want to say I'm so glad you took the risk to be here today. I hope you feel right at home and feel welcome while you're here. And I'd love to meet you. So I'll be out in the lobby after the service. I hope you'll come introduce yourself. And speaking of meeting people in the lobby, quick story. I have a friend who's a pastor who was out in the lobby at his church after the service talking to people. And when he was having a conversation, a little boy ran up to him and looked him in the eye and said, "Your jokes aren't funny." And the boy ran off, didn't say anything, just ran back off. And my friend was kind of startled by that, but he just kept talking. And then the boy ran up for a second time and said, "Your sermons are too long." And he's getting a little caught off guard, what's going on? There's something else going on. But the boy ran away again before he could ask him anything. And so he kept talking. Then the boy came over for a third time, looked at him and said, "And they're boring." And so my friend's really getting kind of upset at all this. And finally he sees that his mother's now coming from across the room. And she says, "Pastor, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have no idea what my son said to you." But he's in this phase where he just repeats everything he hears us say. So for those of you who are already drifting off a little bit, I promise to be as brief and amusing as possible for you this Easter, okay? But the main reason I tell you that is because the story of what happened on the very first Easter has been repeated and retold millions of times, and it's changed billions of lives, including mine. Took place almost 2,000 years ago when this man named Jesus was crucified and buried. Now, if you know anything about his life, you know that Jesus wasn't just any old religious teacher. He actually claimed to be God himself, which so angered the religious leaders of his day, they had him arrested and wrongly accused and eventually crucified. And of course, his disciples were just devastated because they had put all their hope in this man, Jesus, and now he was gone. And so on the third day after he died, a group of women who had been followers of Jesus began to make their way to the tomb to pay their respects. And as they approached the tomb, they asked themselves this provocative question. They said, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?" Now, just to be clear, these women aren't discussing among themselves which one of them had the strength to move it, because the stone would have weighed 3,000 to 4,000 pounds, and the opening of the tomb was at the base of a small slope, so that once it was rolled into place, it would be almost impossible to move. So they're not discussing which one of them was going to move the stone, just the opposite. They're grieving. They're lamenting. They're in pain. Who could roll away this stone? And of course, conventional wisdom would say, nobody can. Nobody can. Because as we all know from our lives, some situations seem to us too difficult, too impossible, too insurmountable. I mean, even back then, before the age of modern science and technology, even back then, people just knew that dead things tend to stay dead, right? I recently heard a true story about a cargo handler at the Seattle airport who was unloading that part of the plane where pets are kept and found that one of the dogs was dead. So the cargo handler kind of panicked, came out, found the owner of the dog, and just made up this story about how the dog got put on the wrong plane, ended up in Phoenix or somewhere, and then he told the owner to come back tomorrow and pick up the dog. This is a true story. But then he's got to figure out, what am I going to do? So get this. He goes to the animal shelter and actually finds a dog that looks sort of like the dog that had died, buys it, and brings it back to try to pass it off as this guy's dog. This is a true story. Well, the next day, the owner comes back and he looks at the dog in the crate and said, "That's not my dog." And the cargo handler's like, "Yeah, it is. Of course it's your dog. Maybe he looks a little different. He's a little smaller, but jet lag, it just kind of happens." The owner said, "No, that's not my dog, because my dog was dead. I was flying it back to be buried. It's not my dog. Now it's your dog, I guess. I don't know whose dog that is." See, here's my point. Conventional wisdom tells us that dead things tend to stay dead, just like broken relationships tend to stay broken, and addicts tend to stay addicted, and bitter people tend to stay bitter. The problem, though, with conventional wisdom is that it cannot explain what happened on the very first Easter. Because after those women arrived at the tomb asking that question, who could roll away this stone? The text says, but when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. Don't be alarmed, he said. You were looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified, but he's risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him. But now go, tell his disciples and Peter, he's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Now, how in the world can you explain something like that? Well, people have wrestled with this for centuries and come up with all sorts of other explanations. Some people say that Jesus' disciples just made all this up to try to keep their little movement going, To which I would say, what movement? I mean, by this point, there was just a few women and some unemployed fishermen who were hiding in fear. That's not much of a movement to keep going. What else is really important is the story they supposedly made up eventually would cost them their lives. And here's the thing, friends, people don't give up their lives for something they know is untrue. The truth is, the only credible explanation for Easter is that the tomb was really empty and Jesus was really alive. And no, conventional wisdom can't explain it. I can't explain it. You can't explain it. But the power of God can. And that's what Easter is all about. The life-changing, stone-rolling, bring it back to life power of God that shows us that God is not actually bound to what feels impossible or improbable or insurmountable for you and me. He can forgive any sin. He can heal any pain. He can redeem any loss. He can roll away any stone, no matter how insurmountable it may seem. I have a friend whose story is a great picture of this. He was raised in the inner city by foster parents, never knew his biological parents. Had a really hard life growing up, and then after he got married, his wife and he started using drugs, which led to their daughter being taken away from them. And suddenly he was facing this impossible situation, personally, relationally, financially, even legally. So who can roll away this stone? Which is when a friend of his told him about Jesus. And his first thought was, and many of you have had this very thought in your life, how can a guy who lived 2,000 years ago do anything about this mess in my life today? But in spite of all those questions, he made the choice. He decided to put his faith in Jesus. And the stone began to move. He got into rehab, stopped using drugs. He and his wife spent years trying to get their daughter back, and eventually they did. And then get this, 1 week after they got their daughter back, he got a message from his birth mom who'd never met, and they met and started a relationship. And that made him curious about his birth father, so he reached out to his birth father, and they started a relationship. And here's the wildest part of the story. His birth father reached out to his birth mother to ask her for forgiveness for walking out on her. And get this, they didn't just reconcile, they got back together, and eventually they got married 30 years after he walked out on her. Get that? Just imagine them at a party being asked, how did you two meet, right? Like imagine that story. And then after that, my friend became a pastor. And he started a nonprofit that supports inner city dads. And he's been a friend and mentor to me. So let me ask you the question again. Who can roll away the stone? Who can heal generations of brokenness? Who can bring a fresh start out of a dead end? God can. God can. And Easter is the proof. Easter is just the evidence that there's no stone that God can't roll away. That's why the angel told those women to go see Peter. Why call out Peter specifically? Because Peter wasn't just hiding somewhere. Peter was stuck in a grave of his own making. Remember, he was Jesus' closest friend and most devoted follower. But when Jesus was arrested, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times. And the shame of that failure cut Peter so deep, he couldn't even bring himself to go to the tomb. And some of you are living in a place like that. in a grave of your own making because of a mistake you made or an addiction you're battling or a secret you're hiding. Or maybe you feel trapped in a grave of fear or grief or depression. Or maybe you failed someone you love, or you've lost a dream in your life and you've tried getting over it, or you've promised to do better, but inside, your soul just feels kind of dead. And if that's you today, let me just say, I have been there too, wondering who can forgive this sin, or who can heal this hurt, or who can roll away this stone. And while I can't promise you that all your problems will be gone tomorrow, I can tell you this: the reason Jesus came out of that grave is so he could bring you out of yours. In fact, if you know the rest of the story, you know Jesus didn't just come back to life and go on his merry way. He went and found Peter, and he loved him, he restored him, and he gave him a fresh start and a new purpose. And that's what he can do in your life. Because friends, there is no stone that God can't roll away in your life and in your life and in your life and in your life. And here's the very best part of the story. I love this. All Jesus had to do in that tomb was get up and walk out. That's all he had to do. Didn't have to find religion in that tomb. Didn't have to become a better person in that tomb. He didn't have to make a bunch of empty promises in that tomb. How do I know? Because he was dead, wrapped in grave clothes, buried for 2 days, but then the stone got rolled away and the power of God filled up his body, and all he had to do was get up and walk out. And friends, that's all you need to do on this Easter morning today to experience the power of God in your life. You don't need to find religion. You don't need to prove that you're a good enough person. You don't need to do anything other than get up and say yes to the power of the risen Christ and let him love you and restore you and give you a fresh start. Just like he did for Peter, and just like he did for those women, and just like he did for my friend in Seattle, and just like he did for someone right here in our church named Jacqueline, who has experienced firsthand the life-changing power of the risen Jesus. So we asked her if she'd be willing to tell a part of her story today, and she said yes. So take a look at this.
My name is Jacqueline Gregerson. I grew up in Southern Illinois on a big piece of farmland. I was one of 3 daughters. My father was very abusive to my mother, which ended their marriage when I was 6 years old. Immediately following the divorce, we switched to Catholicism with my mother. I would eventually become a domestic violence survivor from a partner from the age of 18 until almost 20 years old. What tore me away from that was a conversation with my mom. And from there I left because I realized it wasn't just my life anymore that was being harmed. And I thought my mother had been through enough. I hadn't stepped foot in church in a while. I felt shamed. I felt like I didn't belong there. I ended up finding my husband, who is this magnificent human, who also did not have faith in his life. We struggled to have children. We ended up doing IVF and having my daughter, and then having a surprise journey with my son after being told we couldn't even get pregnant naturally. And then we hit a really rough patch in our marriage. And I started going back to Catholic church. I said, I'm gonna make him go with me. I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna say, that's it. And I got to church that day, and the whole Mass was about living in your faith and not forcing it on others. And I get home and I'm like, you're so lucky, because I was gonna make you go. And he said, you know what's really funny? About 30 minutes ago, I had told myself I wanted to go with you. About 30 minutes ago was when I got put in my place in that pew. We lived down the street. Northshore popped up immediately. I was like, this could be it. After our first service, my husband looked at me and he's like, I can do this. Like, I could do this. We were getting ready for church as a family again. The service happened. Pastor Scotty said, if you're feeling the Holy Spirit today and you want to join us in these baptisms, please make your way. And I'll never forget the way it felt when my husband grabbed my hand and squeezed it and started walking forward. And I was like, this is it. None of the sin, none of the turmoil matters. Today is the day that we get redemption. And I take that first deep breath out of the water, knowing you're inhaling his very existence. And then I cried again because he was getting in and I got to stand behind him. And how beautiful is it that I get to witness someone find faith for the very first time in their life, and that it gets to be my husband. If I could encourage anybody, stop waiting, just say yes. Let him change your life. Let him give you the space to be imperfect, but watch what he does with you afterwards. And there's never a better moment than right now.
There has never been a better moment than right now, right now. Because some of you are here today and maybe someone invited you here, or you found us online, or you're watching online, or whatever brought you here, but inside you know you've never said yes to Jesus and put your life into his hands in faith. Maybe you've been to church a bit or you've heard about him, but you've never said, yes, Jesus, I believe that you love me. Yes, Jesus, I believe that you died for my sins. Yes, Jesus, I believe that you can roll away the stone and bring me out of my grave. And there's never been a better moment than right now to do just that. So if that's you today, I just want to give you this moment just to pause right now and just in the quiet of your heart, just say, yes, Jesus. Yes, Jesus, I believe. And yes, Jesus, I trust you. And yes, Jesus, I want that new life you promised me. Just tell him in your heart right now. Some others of you are here right now and you believe in Jesus, but maybe you've been walking through life a lot like those women on the way to the tomb, head down, heart broken, hopes lost. And while I can't say that tomorrow will magically be easy, I can say that if Jesus conquered his grave, I'm pretty sure he can conquer yours. But you've got to put your trust in him again. You got to put your life in his hands again like you did that time a long time ago. And maybe today, it's your day to do that in a new way, to stare at the face of that stone that's challenging you, that feels so impossible, and say, Jesus, I want to trust you that you can roll away even this stone. And if that's you, I just want to challenge you just to do that right now in your heart. Just say, Jesus, I trust you. I trust you. He can roll away that stone. And if that's you today and you've never been baptized, or if you just said yes to Jesus for the first time and you've never been baptized, that's your next step, to come forward and get baptized. Now, baptism is just a public way of saying, if Jesus got out of his grave, I believe he can raise me out of mine. And what better way to celebrate Easter than to tell the world the stone's been rolled away and I'm coming out of that grave. So here's what I want to do. In just a moment, I want to give anyone here the opportunity to come forward and get baptized today. I didn't say come forward and sign up for baptism. I said come forward and get baptized, like right now in this room today. You don't have to be wearing the right clothes. We've got clothes and towels and private changing areas in the back. You don't have to be a member of this church or even know what it means to be a member of the church. This is not about church membership. This is about stepping into the new life that Jesus conquered the grave to give you. And some of you right now, you know I'm talking to you. You can feel your heart beating a little bit faster. You're already worried about what will the people around you think if I stand up. Don't listen to that fear. Don't worry about what other people think. All that matters is that Jesus came out of his grave so that he could get you out of yours. So here's what we're gonna do. If you're able, I want everyone to stand up. So go ahead and stand up. And on the count of 3, anyone who wants to get baptized can come on forward and head on to the back, and we would love to be part of this moment with you. You can come right on down to this side of the room. Over here on the left, there's a sign that said, I said yes. Someone on our team will be there to greet you, ask you a few questions, and then it's your moment. And this is your moment. This isn't just Easter Sunday. It's not just going to church. This is your moment. Don't miss it, because guess what? You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So are you ready, church? Let me try that again. Are you ready, church? All right, here we go. On 3, come on forward. All ready? 1, 2, here we go. 3, come on forward and get baptized. Let's do this.